This is the final exam review for special problems in animation, terms and definitions. Some useful keyboard shortcuts. The keyboard shortcuts in the timeline. If you press U, it will reveal all keyframes that have been created for the current selected layer, or if no layer is selected, reveals all the keyframes for the current comp. AA, material options for a 3D layer or light options for a light layer. Pressing LL reveals the audio waveform for a sound layer. When you press V, you get the selection tool when you have another tool selected. But don't do this when you have been typing using the text tool, or you will type a V. Pressing P reveals position transforms for the current layer. T reveals opacity transforms for the current layer. R reveals rotation transforms for the current layer. S reveals scale transforms for the current layer. Some universal keyboard shortcuts that you should know. Command Z undoes the previous action. Command A selects all, and Command S saves your file. After Effects 3D lights. There are 4 types of lights available in After Effects. An ambient light doesn't cast shadows. It's a fill light with no definite direction. A spotlight does cast shadows. It has a definite direction and focus. A point light casts shadows. It fills from the center and it has a source. A parallel light casts shadows. It lights evenly and has a definite direction, but no focus. Here are some examples of what light types will look like. I have this set up with the 2 views. So the active camera on the right is the view as you are looking directly at the screen, and the left-hand side is the view from the top. An ambient light, this light has no apparent direction or source. It does not cast shadows. It fills the area with a consistent level of illumination. A spotlight. This light has a specific source and a direction. The light has a cone shape, and it can have a soft or a sharp edge. If an object goes behind the light, it will be dark. A point light. This light is like an incandescent light bulb. It has a position, and the light is emitted outward in a complete circle. It casts shadows. A parallel light casts shadows in straight parallel lines, all equidistant. It is like the sun, so far away that the rays travel in a straight line and don't spread apart. After Effects 3D shadows. 3D layers allow cast shadows that are calculated from the direction and source of the light as it passes the position and shape of 3D objects in the path of the light rays. Shadows can only be cast if the 3D layers have the correct materials settings, and the light is a spot, point, or parallel type with cast shadows enabled. To create shadows in an After Effects file, in the foreground layers, turn on the 3D and enable shadows under the material options. For the background layer, turn on 3D and enable Accept Shadows under material options. 3D space, X, Y, and Z coordinates. The Cartesian coordinate system. This refers to the X, Y, and Z graph used to place objects in the 3D computer graphics world. Cartesian because it was invented by a man named Descartes. According to Wikipedia, if a diagram, a 3D projection, or a 2D perspective drawing shows the X and Y axis horizontally and vertically respectively, then the z-axis should be shown pointing out of the page towards the viewer or camera. In such a 2D diagram of a 3D coordinate system, the z-axis would appear as a line or a ray pointing down and to the left or down and to the right, depending on the presumed viewer or camera perspective. In z-space, in the 3D world of After Effects, the z-axis is oriented away from the viewer. Therefore, a negative z number will bring an object closer to the viewer, and a positive number will be further away from the viewer. 3D space x, y, and z coordinates. Now you can see that the x, y, and z coordinates create little arrows when you're looking at the screen. The x-axis points to the left and the right, and the middle of the screen is at 640 on the ruler, counted in pixels, because the screen is 1280 wide and 640 is half of 1280. The y-axis points up and down, and the middle of the screen is at 360 on the ruler, because the height of the screen is 720 in the files that we've been using. The z-axis points away from the viewer. The center of the screen is at 0. Negative numbers are closer to the viewer. Positive numbers are further away from the viewer. So the lights and the camera are always set at a negative z position by default when you create them. So the x-axis, which is the red arrow axis, is the horizontal axis. Numbers in the ruler start at the left at 0 and move to 1280 at the right. The y-axis is the green arrow axis. It's the vertical axis. Numbers start at the top at 0 and move to 720 at the bottom. The z-axis is the blue arrow axis. It's the depth in space axis. Numbers start at 0 in the mid-plane of the screen and grow positively as you move away from the viewer, and negatively as you move toward the viewer. So, the x-axis, which is the red arrow axis, uses for the position transform the first number. Use this coordinate to move objects to either side of the stage, left or right. The y-axis, which is the green arrow axis, this moves things up and down. It starts at 0 at the top and it moves down to 720. Use this coordinate to move things up or down on the stage. The z-axis is the blue arrow axis. You use this arrow to move objects in front of or behind other objects, or to position the lights or cameras to best show your composition. This is the last coordinate in the position settings. Rotations. The rotation of 90 degrees around the x-axis will allow you to lay a flat plane down like a floor or up like a ceiling, and using position on the y, you can move it up or down. A rotation of 90 degrees around the y-axis will allow you to create a wall in the middle of the stage. Using x, you can move it left or right to place it on either end of the stage. Rotation around the z-axis will make a plane spin around the center of the comp like a pinwheel. Combining rotations will affect the outcome in difficult to describe ways, so try to use just one axis of rotation when possible. Especially at the beginning, you can add more rotations as you get it in the position you wanted. Use the orientation transform to set the original position of an object in space, but don't keyframe orientation unless you really know what you're doing. This is an example of what an X rotation would look like. So it's the red arrow axis, and you can see from the little arrow I've got in the circle that it rotates towards the viewer. The y-axis, the green arrow axis, rotates. As you can see, it's standing up and rotating from the bottom there. And then the z-axis is the blue arrow axis, and it spins around like a pinwheel in a clockwise fashion. Text animators are important. You should know how to do your own text animators. Text animators animate the position, rotation, opacity, and other transforms. They are the basis of the typewriter effect and other text animation presets. They can be saved as your own animation presets. You can look that up in some of the Adobe help. Text animators also allow you to use wiggle, bloat, and other properties or effects. Per Character 3D allows the transformation of individual letters in X, Y, and Z space. Camera settings and focal length. Okay, so a 35mm lens is a common wide-angle lens, sort of a slight fisheye. A 50mm lens is a normal lens. It attempts to depict things as your eye would show it. And then a 135mm is a common telephoto lens, which will make things seem closer to you, but also closer together in space because it flattens out the perspective. A camera orbit null is an empty layer that is the parent of the camera, allowing you to control the rotation and position without changing the camera transforms. So you change the transforms on the null instead of changing the position of the camera. Remember when we did that sweep using Y. After Effects keyframe types and interpolation. A linear keyframe, linear interpolation, creates a uniform rate of change between keyframes. Hold keyframes do just that. They hold the object until another keyframe appears, and then the object jumps. Roving keyframes keep the spacing proportionally constant between the keyframes. Easy ease keyframes have Bezier handles and let you adjust the rate of change as the object nears the keyframe. Ease keyframes are like trains in a railway station in After Effects. You easy ease into the station and slow down to a stop. You easy ease out of the station and speed up as you leave. The options that are available in the Cinema 4D renderer. When you select the Cinema 4D renderer, you will see this. This is a Cinema 4D renderer page, enabling extruded and beveled shapes, text and shapes, reflections, curved footage layers, material overrides on text, shape, bevels, and sides, environment layers in reflections only, and pre-comp depth pass with channel effects. But it disables blending modes, track mats, layer styles. It disables the masks and effects on continuously rasterized layers like Illustrator, text and shape layers, and collapsed 3D pre-composition layers. But it also doesn't preserve underlying transparency, light transmission, transparency, and index of refraction. You can't have a layer that accepts shadows only. You no longer could use motion blur or camera depth of field, but it is very much an improvement to be able to extrude. So you win some, you lose some. Compression and codecs. Compression reduces the size of your file by keeping track of the information but not saving each pixel or bit of information separately as a program normally would. A codec is a term meaning coder decoder or compression decompression. The video codec that we have been using to compress the video output is H.264. Camera moves. A change to what is visible by moving the camera or adjusting the focal length or angle of the lens. So a POV shot is a scene from the point of view of a character. A close-up is an area of detail within a larger picture. A wide angle is a large overall view of the scene and establishing shot to orient the viewer. And you can tell that this is a wide angle lens because the curve, you see the curve of the planks in that deck, that's caused by the shape of the lens and how it is using the light rays. So when you zoom in or zoom out, that's a continuous advance retreat of the camera to the subject. And a pan is when you use a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal scan of the subject by rotating the camera. The production terms, remember, you've always got to remember these production terms. A frame is a single image that is part of a scene, like a word in writing, one image on screen at a moment in time. A keyframe is a frame showing an important change in position or appearance used as a guide for subsequent action. It's used in storyboards to tell the story, showing the beginning or end of a move. A storyboard is a visual outline of an animation or movie using keyframes to describe the action, contains notes about dialogue, camera moves, and editing. Some computer terms and definitions that you also need to remember. A bit is one binary digit, 0 or 1, in a memory cell in a computer. The smallest piece of information, it has two possible states, 0 or 1, on or off. And then a byte is 8 bits of information. Raster bitmap graphics. The image is composed of individual pixels on a two-dimensional grid. Images that are scaled up become pixelated and fuzzy, losing definition and changing appearance. Vector object-oriented graphics. Mathematical formulas are used to describe the shapes in the file, like a circle defined by its radius, a triangle defined by proportions, and the length of size, etc. Fonts are scaled without losing definition and appear the same at any resolution. So the A on the left is a vector, and the A on the right is raster. Color systems. RGB color, additive color system model, used in film, video, and web. Light is emitted from the source. A wider gamut of color is available. Remember, if you use the presets for film and video in the programs we've been using, then you'll be able to use it correctly. It will make the correct type of color system. CMYK color, subtractive color system model used for print. Ink on a surface absorbs light. Fewer colors are available. A pixel is a portmanteau word. Portmanteau is like a suitcase. Made from the words picture element and refers to a dot of light on screen that makes up the picture. So the idea of portmanteau word is that it's like hinged together and closed. Good luck on your exam. The quiz will have 25 questions, multiple choice. It's based on the information in this review session. You will also complete an in-class project using provided files and information. Project for animation and tutorials that are due. 3D text, 3D lighting, 3D camera, 3D per character 3D, and 3D Cinema 4D. Also, you have to turn in your 3D identity project.